Shalom, everyone. Welcome back. Hope everyone had a wonderful week. We certainly did, bringing in a new grandchild into the world, and it's been a wonderful week for us. This week's Torah portion is the portion on Mishpatim. Mishpatim are civil laws, laws that have reasons, laws that make sense, and in fact, many of the laws that are in common use in Western societies today are based on the Torah and found in the Torah. For example, the idea of innocent until proven guilty, fairness in laws and judiciaries and in judging people. So many of the prohibitions of not killing, not stealing, are all found in this week's Torah portion. And in fact, there is an entire several tractates, three of them specifically, and the Talmud dealing with these laws as well. Bava Metzia, Bava Kama, and Bava Basra, an entire section of the Code of Jewish Law that is also dealing with civil laws as well. Tremendous amount of civil laws. And the Torah portion begins, Ela mishpatim asher tasim lifnehem. These are the laws that you should place before them. What does it mean before them? So the commentaries explain before them means that the judgment should be done before Jewish courts, not before non-Jewish courts. In other words, if you have a dispute with another Jew, you should bring it to a Jewish court called a Bet Din, not a civil court. Even if you live in a country where the civil laws are very civil and honest and fair, and in fact, even in countries where the outcome of the judgment will be identical to the outcome that would be found in a Jewish court. Nevertheless, ideally, you should bring it to a bet din. If the parties do not agree, or if one of the parties doesn't agree to that, then you can bring it into a civil court. But really, ideally, we should deal with our disputes internally, as they say, in a bet din, a rabbinical court. Many cities have rabbinical courts. I have personally participated in several of these judgments. We've created a bet din here in San Diego at various times to deal with these issues as well. But the question comes up: why is it so important to have a rabbinical court? Well, you could just as easily do it in a civil court. And there are many reasons given, but one of the main reasons is that even though a civil court may judge according to Torah law, it may not always judge according to Torah law, or it may veer in a different direction based on the whims and beliefs of the civil litigators or the legislators in a particular country. They may start in one way and they may veer off in another way. And you say, whoa, wait a minute. That's not exactly according to Torah law here. It started off that way, but it didn't end up that way. So, therefore, we believe very much that we should follow Torah law and we should make sure that our judgments are in keeping with halacha, with Jewish law. And Jewish law is the ultimate in fairness, in kindness, and in the right way things should be done. Unlike other religions where they believe an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, means that if someone knocks out your tooth, you knock out their tooth, or if someone knocks out your eye, you knock out their eye. We never believed that. We always believed that it meant monetary compensation, that you are compensated the value of an eye, the value of a tooth. In fact, in American law, that is the judgment. That's how it's determined. What is the value of an eye? What is the value of a tooth? And these things are determined according to American law as well. And Jewish law was the first to really decide that in that regard. So ideally, what is it really all about? What it's about is um, making sure that we are following God. We're following what God wants us to do, not what people want us to do. What does God want us to do? And this is called in Hebrew, Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shemayim, accepting upon ourselves the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, That is what we're interested in. Not We're not really interested in civil laws, but we're interested in godly laws. And godly laws are only found in the Torah. Godly laws are only found in the Torah. And Torah does not change. Torah might be reinterpreted based on circumstances, but the laws don't change. And therefore, the rabbi's emphasis and the Torah emphasizes very much that when we have disputes, indeed, we should take them to a reputable rabbinical court to decide it. And indeed, people do that today. If you have any questions in this regard, I'd be happy to answer, or many other Orthodox rabbis would be happy to answer these questions based on halacha, based on Jewish law. In fact, many people very often come to me with disputes that they have, and even without convening a bet din of three rabbis, I will discuss it with them and come to the conclusion based on Jewish law. And I'll give you one example. Sometimes people come to me and they say there are end of life issues. What should we do? Should we unplug the feeding tubes and the breathing apparatus for a person who's dying or not? Is that the proper thing to do? What about abortions? Is that permitted? Are we allowed to do that? Um, are 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 we allowed to end life support? Are we allowed to do um, physician physician assisted suicide? And Jewish law has an opinion about these things, and you don't need to consult the bedin for a rabbi, a competent rabbi, to make a decision in that regard. And so many of these things can be answered by rabbis, including disputes, including monetary disputes or business disputes. They can be decided by rabbis. I've had sometimes litigants come into my office who were angry and furious with each other over a particular dispute. They walked out hand in hand, and they went out to Starbucks and had a coffee together. So indeed, it can be settled. I've had husbands and wives arguing about divorce settlements for years, and they were not able to come to a conclusion from mediators and lawyers and judges, and they were at wits' end after so many years of arguing with each other. And I suggested we sit down together, and in 2 hours we were able to settle it, and everyone was happy with the settlement. So rabbis have a particular knowledge of human behavior and of Jewish law that allows them to be in a unique situation to settle so many of these disputes. Don't be afraid to call out and reach out to your neighborhood rabbi for their assistance in this regard, and I'm sure you will be pleasantly satisfied. Candlelighting in San Diego this week is at 5 o'clock. It's getting a little bit later. I want to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.